Bel Cranel is this 14-year-old virgin loser who's all about adventure, especially if it means impressing his crush none other than Eyes, the gorgeous, butt-kicking swordswoman waifu everyone dreams of. Bel's, well, let's just say he's not exactly the smoothest dude out there. He's kind of a dork, totally inexperienced, and yes, very much a virgin. But does that stop him? No. In Bel's mind, he's going to get stronger, way stronger, eye-level strong. All so he can one day stand beside her like an absolute boss. And yeah, maybe, just maybe, lay with her. It all kicks off with Bel running for his life from a minotaur in the dungeon. Just when it looks like he's about to get flattened into a Bel pancake, along comes a beautiful girl with long, flowing golden hair, Eyes Wallenstein, the sword princess. She absolutely obliterates the minotaur, saving Bel in the most epic way possible. Bel covered in monster blood, but also just starry-eyed because, well, love at first sight is messy. Dazed and a little love-struck, Bel scrambles to find more info on this mysterious girl, so he heads over to chat with his guild advisor, Ina. Instead of swooning over Eyes with him, Ina scolds him for almost getting himself squashed, like a mom lecturing her kid for trying to pet a bear. But then, she lightens up and gives Bel some romantic advice, which might be her way of saying he's out of her league. Bel eventually heads back home, where his cute, chaotic goddess Hestia is waiting. She's brought fried potatoes, and the two of them sit down to a simple but cozy dinner. Life could be good if things stayed simple, but of course, they don't. Later that night, when Hestia updates Bel's status, because that's a thing in their world, she discovers that Bel's picked up a new skill, Lyri's Freeze. A good news, but Hestia, in true mischievous goddess style, decides to keep it a secret. Just a little power upgrade surprise for later. The next morning, Bel wakes up to find Hestia snoozing on top of him talk about a wake-up call. He scrambles out of bed, his face as red as a tomato, and hurries to get dressed for another day in the dungeon. Out on the street, he suddenly gets this weird feeling that someone's watching him. He spins around, but there's no one there. Before he can think too much about it, a girl approaches him, holding out a magic stone, claiming he dropped it. Bel's pretty sure he traded all his stones, but she insists, and he ends up taking it. She then hits him with a question if he's an adventurer and why he's going to the dungeon so early. Before Bel can answer, his stomach gives a not-so-subtle growl. The girl, Seer, smiles and hands him a lunchbox, which he tries to politely refuse. But she's insistent and reassures him that she'll grab food later at the pub where she works. In return, she makes him promise to swing by the pub that evening. Armed with his new lunch, Bel heads back to the dungeon, where he dives into monster fights, fueled by thoughts of Eyes. Evening rolls around, and when Hestia updates his status again, Bel is blown away. His stats have skyrocketed. When he asks Hestia about it, though, she brushes him off and storms out, leaving Bel a little confused. Later, he remembers his promise to Seer and heads to her workplace, the pub called the Hostess of Fertility. Seer greets him with a warm smile, and the pub's owner treats him to a mountain of food that could probably feed a family. While he's digging in, one of the other pub girls announces that the Loki Familia has arrived, which just so happens to include the Eyes Wallenstein. Bel's heart probably skips a beat. The Loki Familia members are in full party mode, and it's all fun and games until one of them, a drunk werewolf guy named Bite, starts running his mouth. He remembers the Minotaur incident and proceeds to roast Bel, saying he ran away like a coward and implying he's way too weak to even think about someone like I. Embarrassed and fired up, Bel bolts from the pub and heads straight into the dungeon again, determined to prove everyone wrong. He fights monsters with everything he's got, letting all that frustration out on any unlucky creature that crosses his path. By the time he finally stops, he's totally battered and barely standing. The next morning, he finally limps his way home, where Hestia's been waiting for him all night. The moment she sees him, she runs over, catching him just as he collapses, bloodied, bruised, and looking like he's gone a few rounds. Bel looks up at Hestia and whispers he wants to get stronger. The next day, Hestia just got done updating Bel's status and nearly did a double take. Turns out, our guy's got this rare skill, Lyri's Freeze, making him grow in strength way faster than usual. But rather than spill the beans to him, Hestia decides, A, better keep this on the down low. Don't need other gods sniffing around. So instead of handing over his status sheet, she just tells him he's on a hot streak and has some real talent for this adventuring gig. Then she drops a little heartfelt speech, promising to support him however she can, as long as he doesn't go doing anything reckless again. Bel promises to stick around, and with that, Hestia says she'll be gone for a few days. Meanwhile, Bel heads over to the Hostess of Fertility to make good on last night's tab. Luckily, Mia, the big-hearted pub owner, lets it slide, and Seer even packs him another lunchbox. Mia hints that it was Seer who went to bat for him, so he should thank her properly, and maybe give his ego a bit of a boost after he ran out the night before. Over at the Gods' big social bash, aka free food for Hestia, she's out here piling her plate when Freya and then Loki wander over. Naturally, Hestia asks Loki if Eyes is seeing anyone, but Loki told her that she'd tear anyone apart who tried. Then Freya, noticing Loki's fancy outfit, snarks about her dressing up for once, which Loki fires back with an insult aimed squarely at Hestia's outfit. This devolves into the ultimate petty fight. Hestia mocks Loki's lack of curves. Loki takes a jab at Hestia's abundant curves, and pretty soon they're pinching cheeks and going at it. The other gods start placing bets, and Loki leaves the fight in tears while the gods are laughing it up. Enter Hephaestus, who's barely there for a minute minute before Hestia tries to hit her up for a weapon, but Hephaestus quickly shuts down any talk of loans, reminding her of the freeloading era. But Hestia, unfazed, declares things are different now she's got her own familia member. Later that evening, Belle's outside a weapons shop when Mayak, a kind god with a busy schedule, stops by and hands Belle a couple of potions. Belle thanks him, and they part ways, with Belle feeling a bit better. Back in Hephaestus's workshop, Hestia's still begging her to make Belle a weapon, practically bowing to the ground. Hephaestus finally gives in, agreeing to make the weapon if Hestia promises to pay off her debt, no matter how long it takes. Overjoyed, Hestia eagerly watches Hephaestus start working on a new knife, happy that the weapon will be crafted by Hephaestus herself. Finally, after some hard work, the knife is ready. Hephaestus wraps it up, ties it around Hestia, and tells her to get it to Belle. Meanwhile, Freya and Loki are hanging out at a cafe's balcony, with Eyes quietly standing guard behind Loki. Loki playfully teases Freya, trying to figure out who she's got her eye on, but Freya keeps things vague, talking about some promising young adventurer. When she spots Belle walking by, she excuses herself, with Eyes catching sight of him too. Soon after, Belle wanders over to Monster-Infested, looking for Cyr but running into Hestia instead. She doesn't waste the opportunity, grabbing him for a little impromptu date. They munch on crepes, chat, and Hestia is almost convinced he's there for her until she realizes he was actually looking for another girl, before she can sulk too much. Chaos erupts as Silverback, a monster with a one-track mind, breaks free and heads straight for Hestia. The two of them bolt through the streets, eventually cornered in a shady part of town, and Belle decides to make his stand. Despite his nerves, Belle leaps in to protect Hestia, but his sword shatters against the monster. They scramble to escape, and finally, in a desperate move, Belle locks Hestia in a tunnel, yelling that he can't lose any more family members. With the Silverback still on his trail, Belle prepares to face it down alone. Flashback kicks in where young Belle's grandpa got taken out by a monster on the mountainside, which hit Belle hard and inspired him to become an adventurer. Of course, back then, every familia he approached told him no thanks until Hestia came along, scooped him up, and gave him a home in her familia. Fast forward to now. Belle's locked Hestia in a tunnel for her own safety while he goes toe-to-toe with a massive, angry Silverback. Meanwhile, back at the Monster-Infested Coliseum, Ganesha's learning that a bunch of monsters escaped. He tells his crew to get help from the other familias, and when his subordinates balk at the idea of losing face, he's all pride? Not when lives are on the line. Then he heads out to handle the mess, leaving his underlings to sort things out. Belle's trying to fend off the Silverback, but his dagger snaps under the pressure. Hestia, still running through the tunnels, trips and remembers Hephaestus's tip on engraving hieroglyphics into weapons, which might just save Belle. So, she gets back on her feet, refocused and running to find him. Meanwhile, Misha tells Aina about the monster escape, and an emergency request goes out for any adventurers to help out regardless of familia. Ice, the legendary sword princess, overhears and heads off to lend a hand. Aina, hearing this, praises Eyes and even admits to herself that Belle's crush might be more understandable than she thought. But she can't shake the feeling that Belle's probably out there in the thick of things. And she's not wrong. Belle's still struggling to keep up with the Silverback, getting tossed around, and just when it looks like he's about to go down, Hestia shows up. Belle's understandably panicked to see her. Didn't he lock her up to keep her safe? But Hestia's got this look of determination. They barely get a breather before the Silverback charges again. Belle lunges at Hestia to shield her, sending them both crashing through a door. As they catch their breath, Hestia gives Belle a heartfelt reminder of their promise to protect each other, then presents him with the ultimate game changer, Hestia's knife, with his new weapon in hand. Belle takes on the Silverback with a newfound confidence. His first attack breaks one of the monster's chains, leaving him and Hestia in awe of the knife's power. Hestia cheers him on, telling him this weapon's alive and will grow alongside him. Inspired, Belle charges again, shattering the Silverback's face mask, slicing through its armor, and landing a final, decisive blow. With the beast finally down, a crowd of locals gathers and erupts into applause. Hestia throws herself into Belle's arms, thrilled by his victory, while Belle can barely believe he's finally become the hero he dreamed of being. Ice, who'd been watching the whole thing, nods approvingly from the crowd, though Loki sneaks up behind her for a cheeky attempt at a butt grab and misses. Nearby, Freya watches from a rooftop, half amused, half mysterious, as she wonders if maybe she overdid it this time with her help. Ganesha, meanwhile, wraps up the cleanup, clearly pleased with how things turned out, while Aina jots down a report on the whole monster incident back at the guild. Belle, still at the hostess of fertility, is watching over Hestia's room when Cyr comes by with some good news. They can stay as long as they need. She even admits she feels a little responsible for him getting roped into all this craziness, especially since it all started with her misplaced purse. When Hestia wakes up, Belle brings her up to speed on everything that happened. Then he notices something on his new knife scabbard, her name. Hestia explains how she'd seen him longingly eyeing the weapons in Hephaestus's shop and decided he deserved something truly special just for him. Belle's worried about how much it must have cost, but Hestia reassures him she's got it covered. Moved by her dedication, Belle pulls her into a hug, and she she gently reminds him that he can always lean on her. Meanwhile, down in the dungeon, another adventurer, GED Raish, is barking orders at his porter, Lilyruka Arde. Poor Lily's scrambling to keep up while Ged's grumbling about using her as monster bait if she falls behind. At the guild, Ina's giving Bell an earful for trying to level up to the 7th floor of the dungeon way too soon. But Bell's told her that his stats are already at E rank. Ina checks his stats, and, to her surprise, he's not kidding. With a reluctant nod, she gives him the green light, but then raises an eyebrow at his flimsy armor. She decides they need to go shopping and told him to meet her by the city statue tomorrow, and he nervously agrees. The next day, Bell meets Ina at the city center, ready to get himself some actual armor. They head to the Hephaestus shop in Babel, despite Bell's protest that everything there is way out of his budget. But Ina's not hearing it and basically drags him in. They're browsing around when, surprise, they run into Hestia, who's in a maid outfit. Bell gets adorably flustered, and Hestia's got her suspicions about Ina, especially after she introduces herself. She then asks if she's using her guild position to get close to him. Hestia asks. Ina denies it and is here for armor shopping instead. Eventually, they make it to the budget-friendly section, and Bell finds a light armor set made by Welf Krodzo. It's a pretty good fit for him, but it'll cost almost all his money. Ina's a little exasperated with his obsession with light armor, but hey, if he's happy, she's happy. She also suggests he consider hiring a supporter to boost his efficiency in the dungeon, and Bell says he'll think about it. That night, after Bell and Ina part ways, she hands him a bracer as a little bonus gift. On his way home, Bell stumbles on a scene with a sketchy adventurer named Ged, who's roughing up his supporter, a small Palom girl named Lily. Bell steps in, and Ged's not happy. He tries to turn his anger on Bell, but Ryu shows up, cool as ice, and shuts Ged down in no time. Bell's grateful, and Ryu waves it off like it's nothing. The girl, though? Gone in a flash. The next day, Bell's decked out in his new armor and bracer, ready to hit the dungeon. Near the entrance, he runs into Lily again. She asks if he's looking for a supporter and offers her services, flashing him a smile. Bell recognizes her as the girl from yesterday, but she explains she's actually a Chianthrope, which throws him off for a second. They sit by the fountain, chat about the arrangement, and Bell agrees to give it a shot with her as his supporter for the day. In the dungeon, Bell faces down a pack of killer ants, with Lily providing backup. Afterward, she admires his knife, and Bell proudly tells her it's a gift from his goddess. When Bell asks what familia she's with, she answers that she's in the Soma Familia and suggests they wrap things up for the day after gathering their loot. Later at the guild, Ina gives Bell a quick history lesson on the Soma Familia. Bell mentions he's decided to keep Lily as his supporter, and Ina's on board. But right as he's leaving, Ina notices his knife is missing. Bell's heart skips a beat. Meanwhile, Lily's trying to sell Bell's knife to Bomb Cornwall, but the shop owner's not impressed says it's practically dead. On her way out, she runs into Ryu and Cyr again, and Ryu insists on inspecting the knife. Lily tries to play it off as hers, but Ryu, not buying it, flings a coin that forces her to drop it. Shaken, Lily bolts and, in her rush, runs into Bell. Ryu then hands Bell the knife, to his utter relief. He thinks he must have dropped it somehow, but Ryu hints that a certain Palom had it. Cyr gives Lily a parting warning to stay out of trouble. Bell, still bewildered, offers to have Lily join him in the dungeon again. The next day, they're back in action. Bell's learned his lesson and now keeps his knife safely stored in his bracer. They talk payments, and Bell generously offers to split the earnings 5,050, which makes Lily blink in surprise. With her usual supporters, she probably never saw that much cash, but Bell insists she's worth it. Elsewhere, a Soma Familia member is grousing over his lack of earnings, while Misha and Ina quietly talk about the Familia's financial issues. Meanwhile, Eyes and her comrade Reveria are locked in battle with some unknown monster, and Freya, ever the mischief maker, is plotting her next game with Bell. So, one night at a bar, Hestia is absolutely losing it over Bell and Lily hanging out. She spills all her woes to Mayak, who, honestly, could not care less. He's like, Bell's his own person, chill out. But Hestia's is not chilling. After a few too many mugs of beer, Hestia's in full-on meltdown mode, going on and on about Bell and Lily. The next day, though, Hestia's paying the price for her wild night. She's got a hangover from hell, and Bell's trying to play nurse, but she's too grumpy to appreciate it. Trying to earn some brownie points, Bell offers to take her out for a meal with the money he made in the dungeon. Hestia, being extra as always, decides that it's a date, sets the time, sets the place, and starts prepping like it's the most important event of her life. Now, Hestia, in all her glory, heads to the temple baths to freshen up. There, she runs into Demeter, who immediately starts asking about Hestia's date. Demeter, being the gossip queen she is, leaks the news to every single person in the bathhouse, and suddenly, Hestia is the center of attention. Totally embarrassed, she bolts out of there, but not before dropping the big reveal she's going out with Bell. So, the big moment arrives. Bell's waiting at the spot Hestia told him to meet her, but when she shows up, it's not just her. Every goddess from the temple bath comes pouring in. Demeter practically apologizes for stalking Hestia, all in the name of finding out who the lucky guy is. Meanwhile, Belle gets smothered by Demeter's chest, which, naturally, makes Hestia super jealous, so they both make a hasty escape. Belle and Hestia are running for their lives, weaving through the town, trying to outrun a pack of relentless goddesses. They barely make it to the bell tower, where they catch their breath and enjoy the view of Babel Tower, agreeing to come back one day and just chill. Meanwhile, Lily's having a much less fun time. She's got this jerk named Canoe from the Soma Familia stealing her money, but Lily's tough, and she swears she'll get Belle's knife back. The very next day, at the guild, Misha and Ina are chatting about how the Soma Familia's rolling in cash again. Meanwhile, Belle's back in the dungeon, fighting off killer ants and Almirage with Lily's help and her magic knife. After the battle, Belle's all grateful for Lily's help, thanking her for saving his life and using such a precious item. Afterward, the two grab lunch, and Lily asks for the next day off. She needs to attend a Soma Familia meeting, and Belle's agrees to it. The next day, Belle heads to Seer's place to drop off lunch and asks her what she does on her days off. Seer, of course, likes reading, and Belle's being brainless he is, told her that books are complicated. But then a book on magic catches his eye, and Seer agreed to take it. Later, back at home, Belle's totally engrossed in this magic book, answering all these crazy questions it brings up. That night, Hestia wakes him up to check on him, and Belle tells her about the book. She freaks out when she sees it's a grimoire, a super expensive one. Hestia's told her that he got some serious magic potential, and when she performs a status update on him, Belle can now use firebolt magic. Hestia's pumped, but tells Belle to wait until tomorrow to try it out in the dungeon. But of course, Belle's too impatient, so he sneaks off in the middle of the night to test it out. He uses it on some goblins, but then plot twist, he gets exhausted and faints deep in the dungeon. Eyes and Riveria show up, find him passed out, and when Belle wakes up, freaking out and rolling off Eyes' lap in full-on panic mode. The next morning, Belle's totally embarrassed about running away from Eyes again. Hestia's up and about and realizes Belle's grimoire is actually super expensive, and she's willing to pay for it. Belle disagrees, but Hestia is insistent. Then, later, Belle apologizes to Mayok for his whole magic book mess-up, but Mayok's told her he don't have to worry. Meanwhile, Ina's out shopping and runs into Loki and Riveria. Because of this encounter, Ina gets tricked into making Riveria buy a ridiculously expensive bottle of Soma wine. Why? So, Loki can answer her questions about the Soma Familia. Turns out, they don't actually worship Soma, they worship the wine itself. Back to Lily, who's dealing with Canoe again, and just when you think things couldn't get worse, Lily's stalked by GED, her old, annoying partner. Ged wants to team up with Belle to go after Lily's money, but Belle's like, not today, buddy. Lily brushes off the whole conversation, and she and Belle head off to the dungeon. But deep down, Lily knows her time with Belle is probably running out. Lily's flash back when Lily is being mistreated by her adventuring party for so long that now she's got some major trust issues. She basically hates all adventurers because of how poorly she was treated. Meanwhile, Loki's chilling at the Twilight Manor, sipping on some more Soma wine, which, let's be honest, sounds like a fancy name for wine that gets you absolutely wrecked. Loki spills the tea to Ina about the Soma Familia, revealing that the wine they sell is a total flop. The real stuff is so patent, it gets you hammered, and the entire Familia is just there for the wine, nothing else. They even pull some sketchy moves like extortion and sacrifices to keep their wine supply rolling. Yikes, Loki's basically a walking gossip machine. And then, because she's Loki, she drags Eyes along for a status update session. Now, back to Lily, she's preparing for something we're all nervous now. Meanwhile, Hestia and Belle are chatting about how Lily is definitely a target for some shady adventurers. Hestia's got her suspicions, and ask Belle if you really want to trust her. But Belle's got a heart of gold and trust her. The next day, Belle meets up with Lily outside the dungeon, and she's got big plans. She suggests they dive into level 10, which is way higher than Belle is comfortable with. But Lily's got that charm, and before you know it, Belle's all in. Meanwhile, Ina's doing some dungeon inspection and happens to run into Eyes, because of course, the plot thickens. They overhear Canoe and his shady crew plotting to scam Belle. Ina's not having any of it, so she asks Eyes for a little favor. Back to Belle and Lily, they're deep in level 10 when they're suddenly faced with a huge orc. Belle said that it's fine and can totally handle it, and with his new base lard and firebolt magic, he takes the orc down like a champ. But where's Lily? She's gone, and so is Belle's knife. Turns out, Lily swiped and ditched him. Meanwhile, Lily's having a breakdown of her own. She cancels out her magic spell that gives her Beastman ears, yep, you heard that right, and she's off to sell Belle's knife and escape the mess that is the Soma Familia. But before she can make her big getaway, she gets tripped by GED, who's ready to throw hands and strip her of her gear. Things quickly go from bad to worse, as Canoe and his crew show up and betray GED. Canoe uses some killer ant corpses to summon a horde of ants, and in the chaos, Ged gets absolutely swarmed and killed. Lily's stuck in the middle of all this, and Canoe's thought that he's going to use her as a decoy while he escapes. Lily's thought she was doomed, but before things get too bad, guess who shows up? Belle. That's right, Belle comes in clutch, blasting the killer ants with firebolt and saving Lily's sorry self. And just like that, he forgives her for all the betrayal. Freya's just chilling in her library, sipping and casually evaluating Belle's growth like it's no big deal. She notices he's improving, but there's a catch: he's super hesitant. And Freya thought that if he just gets over this hurdle, he's going to skyrocket, and then leaves the rest of his growth to Otter, basically the dungeon's version of a walking tank. Meanwhile, Belle and Lily are out for a stroll, and things get real deep when Lily talks about her transformation magic. She's planning on using it to fake her death and get away from the mess she made. Belle's all cool with it, no hard feelings, and Lily's low-key surprised. The guy really is forgiving. They head back to the church, where Lily gets formally introduced to Hestia. You'd think that'd be a smooth meeting, but now Hestia goes full big sister mode, talking about how she doesn't trust Lily because of the whole betrayal thing. But she does entrust her with looking after Belle, because apparently Belle's too naive to survive on his own. Then Hestia straight up tells Lily to not get all cozy with Belle. Of course, Lily, trying to save face, hugs his other arm like she's in some weird contest. Belle then peace out of there faster than a lightning, heading straight for the guild to escape the chaos. Over at the guild, Belle walks in on Ina chatting with Eyes. He then hesitates, but then proceeds to bump into a muscular guy because apparently Belle's personal space is just a suggestion. Eyes tries to stop him, and Ina scolds him because, let's face it, Belle needs some scolding. Then the convo turns to the time Belle almost got gobbled up by orcs on level 10 of the dungeon. Eyes returns his arm protector, and Belle asks if she's the one who saved him. Eyes, being the literal sword princess that she is, apologizes for letting a minotaur escape, but Belle thanked her instead for saving his life. Eyes smiles, and Belle's whole heart melts, and the whole thing's just adorable. But then, Eyes reveals she wants to train Belle, because clearly she's the only one who can help him not suck at fighting. Belle, naturally, is super stoked about it. The next day, another casual training session happened where Belle gets knocked out by Eyes multiple times. Eyes isn't going easy on him, and Belle's learning real fast that being a fighter isn't all fun and games. But there's a twist. Eyes notices that Belle's got some deep-rooted fear, and it's not just the training. Nope, it's the Minotaur. Eyes told her to face that fear, so they spar until daybreak. And you know what? They even do some special nap training, because apparently that's a thing now. Eyes is out like a light in 2 seconds, but Belle gets some unexpected advice from his grandpa and Hestia's ghost. They argue a bit, but Belle doesn't take advantage of the situation and just respects Eyes' sleep. Meanwhile, in the dungeon, Otter's busy fighting a bunch of Minotaur because why not? He's all about making a Minotaur his new apprentice and gives it a new weapon to master. He's basically the dungeon's personal trainer at this point. Back to Belle and Lily, they're on level 10 of the dungeon, still doing their thing. Belle's got bruises all over his face, but he's trying real hard not to admit it. Lily's worried, but Belle's all told her he's fine, but really, he's not. Then they get hit with a ton of imps. Belle's is confident and takes them out with Lily's little ballista. Yes, it's as cool as it sounds. Just when things seem safe, some orcs show up, and Belle's decides not to retreat and determined to catch up to Ice's level. Lily's a little skeptical, but Belle's decide to go deeper. Classic Belle. The next morning, Belle's still sparring with Eyes, and surprise, he gets knocked out again. But hey, progress. They take a breather, and Belle admits he wants to get stronger for someone important to him. Eyes totally gets it. Down in the dungeon, Otter's still handling Minotaur business. He breaks one's horn because why not? And things are looking real intense. Back on the streets, Belle and Eyes stop by Hestia's food stall because everyone has to eat. Hestia, of course, makes Belle apologize for his promiscuous behavior because obviously that's his fault. But after some back and forth, Hestia becomes fine with it, but no funny business. A news drops at the guild that Eyes just single-handedly took down some massive boss on the 37th dungeon level. Belle's super impressed, but also a bit down. Imagine having a crush on someone who can one-hit stuff you're still struggling with. Later, he's out on the town when Cyr ropes him into doing dishes. Yep, Belle, the aspiring hero, is now scrubbing plates. He's not thrilled, but figures it'll keep his mind off Eyes and her crazy accomplishments. Ryu, another former adventurer and current waitress, decides to help out and even dishes out some advice. If Belle wants to rank up, he's got to pull off good deeds, beat tougher enemies, and maybe even, gasp, work with a party instead of going solo. Next day, Belle wraps up his last day of training with Eyes, and he actually manages to land a counterattack. They wish each other luck, and Belle's more fired up than ever to reach her level one day. Back at the church, Belle's packing for his next adventure, but when Hestia tries to show him his updated stats, but he disagrees and do it later instead. So off he goes, straight into another day of monster punching. Meanwhile, the Loki Familia is planning a big ol' expedition to level 59. They're heading all the way down to level 50 with plans to break records. Across town, Freya's intrigued. She's wondering if Belle's about to get another boost in power. So, Belle and Lily head down to the 9th level, and Belle's feeling the creepiest vibe ever. Then, bam, a one-horned Minotaur appears, the same one that Ottar was training with. Belle tries his best, launching firebolt spells, but the Minotaur just shrugs it off, slams him into the wall, and has him reeling. Meanwhile, the Loki Familia hears hears there's a loose minotaur terrorizing the 9th level and rushes down to help. Belle, injured and barely dodging attacks, tells Lily to get out of there, but she refuses, so Belle snaps and sends her off, alone. He braces himself and dives back into the fight, thinking, no way am I going to let Eyes save me again. Speaking of Eyes, she does arrive with the Loki Familia just in time to see Belle, who, instead of quitting, gets even more fired up. The wolf guy can't help but mock Belle, calling him Tomato Guy because last time he saw him, Belle was covered in blood and looking like a squashed tomato. Lily's begging the group to save Belle, but they're all kinda curious if he can actually handle it. As Belle goes all in with his knife, Freya's watching too, totally thrilled by the drama unfolding. The Minotaur's tough, and Belle's blade doesn't quite cut it. But after his weapon breaks, Belle steals the Minotaur's own weapon, slices it up, and finally delivers a powerful series of firebolts, finishing it off in a blaze of glory. Lily rushes over, and the Loki Familia, genuinely impressed, check Belle's stats, which are, shockingly, all S rank. That's the end of the recap. Let us know if you want part 2 by leaving a comment in the comment section down below. Also, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel to avoid being virgin forever. See you guys in the next video.